Good evening. My name is Linda Heine. I am a member of the New Ulm League of Women Voters and will be your moderator at this candidate forum for Minnesota House Districts 18A and 18B. This forum is being presented by the St. Peter Area League of Women Voters with co-sponsor St. Peter Chamber of Commerce. The League of Women Voters is a local, state, and national nonpartisan volunteer group. The League encourages informed and active participation of citizens in government, and it influences public policy through education and advocacy. The League does not support candidates or political parties. Our event tonight is designed to allow the candidates an opportunity to express their views on issues important to members of the public. This forum is being recorded in its entirety without an audience on September 10th in the Governor's Room at the St. Peter Community Center. Editing is authorized only for official media reporting. Excerpts or edited clips of candidate forums may not be used for partisan political purposes. I will ask questions tonight submitted by the public to the League via email prior to this evening. League question facilitators screened all of the questions, and they may have been rephrased, combined, or some questions may have been eliminated to avoid duplication. We will not ask questions that are irrelevant to the office, that are designed to make a statement rather than solicit information. We do not ask questions that are hostile, embarrassing, inappropriate, or of a personal nature. As the forum moderator, I have final responsibility to determine which questions will be asked. All of the candidates who filed are on record with the Minnesota Secretary of State's office for House District 18A and 18B have been invited to participate, and we have with us tonight Jeff Brand and Erica Schwartz, candidates for House District 18A, and Luke Frederick and Dar Vosberg, candidates for House District 18B. The candidates will have 2 minutes for opening statements. Then on a rotating basis, we will ask questions. They will each have 2 minutes to answer, except for occasional lightning round questions, which I'll toss in. And the lightning round questions require a yes or no answer, which definitely does not take 2 minutes. At the end of the forum, each candidate will have 2 minutes to make a closing statement. We have timers present who will hold up a yellow sign so the candidates can see when they have 15 seconds left of their time, and a red stop sign when their time is up. Candidates may finish a sentence that has been started before the red stop sign is shown. Timers tonight are Harriet Mason and Victoria Steinhaus. Both are members of the St. Peter Area League. We've asked each of the candidates to be specific in their opening statements as to the reasons they are running for office and what unique qualities, skills, experience, or expertise they would bring to the job. We are ready to begin now. We'll start with opening statements with House 18A candidates, beginning with Jeff Brand, followed by Erica Schwartz, and then we'll move ahead with 18B candidates, Luke Frederick, and then Dar Vosberg. If you're ready, go ahead.
I'm State Representative Jeff Brand. I've represented you for 2 terms in St. Paul. And in that time, I've been very successful. I was able to pass 40 bills into law, 13 my first 2 years and 27 in my last 2 years. That also means that I brought $225 million to Greater Minnesota for things like housing and childcare, things that are essential for our economy here in Greater Minnesota. I serve as Vice Chair of the Workforce Development Committee. I'm on the Tax Committee. I also am on the Environment and Natural Resources Committee. And finally, I'm also on the Transportation Committee as well. My wife and I have a small business. We live here in St. Peter. We've owned this small business for about 13 years now. Both of our children are public school students at St. Peter Middle School this year, and I am just really proud to represent District 18A at the legislature. What I bring to the legislature is I've got some experience. I served for 7 years on this city council in St. Peter before being elected in 2018 to represent you at the state legislature. I bring that small business experience. I also bring that city legislative experience. And finally, again, I've been there for 2 terms, and I've also been a former member of the Coalition of Greater Minnesota Cities on the executive board while I was a city council member. And so I'm looking forward to tonight's conversation, and with that, it looks like I'm just a little bit early on my 2 minutes.
Just wait for the timers to reset there. You ready? Okay, then we'll go ahead to Erica Schwartz.
Good evening. Thank you, ladies, for hosting this wonderful event tonight. My name is Erica Schwartz, and I reside in Nicollet, Minnesota, of Nicollet County, 18A. I am a mother of 3 with a blended family. I am also married into a small business that's family-owned, and I've worked various jobs to support my daughter as a single parent when raising her. I think that my hard work, determination makes me right for the job, as times are tough all over when I see struggling families just to buy the bare essentials. I think it's time for a change. Change is not easy, but it's necessary. So, thank you.
Okay. Luke Frederick, go ahead.
First, I want to say thank you to the league for hosting the forum. Having a way to be able to get our voice out there and help the community get more involved with candidates is a wonderful thing. So I'm a Mankato kid. I grew up here. I took a brief stint out to the East Coast where I volunteered for a year through the AmeriCorps program, but I came back, went to school at MSU, and started working at the state hospital here in St. Peter. I've now been working there for about 19 and a half years. My pathway into politics actually was through my labor union. I've been a labor union member the entire time in my whole career, but I was tired of seeing my friends and colleagues get hurt on the job, so I turned to my labor union, like, what can we do? And he's like, let's go lobby. And I didn't even know what lobbying meant, but we did it. We went up to the Capitol, and I was able to help make changes both in staffing and creating safer working environments. And I saw firsthand that government can really work for people. But I also noticed that there were some people that seemed more receptive to us and wanting to listen to us and fight for workers than others did. And I found that my party, my home, it felt like, was more with the Democratic Party. And so I got more involved at the local level with Democratic politics. And then when my predecessor announced his retirement in 2020, I decided to throw my hat in the ring. And I was lucky enough to get elected, so I've been serving in the legislature for 4 years. However, my life experience and my work in mental health really comes through in my legislative work as well. I have been a champion for the expansion of mental health. I will continue to fight for mental health. I will continue to fight for substance use disorder treatment and for the people of Minnesota. And my focus will always be on the average person and not for those of the richest among us, because I think the people who will benefit the most is just your average day person.
Okay, thank you. Dar Vosberg.
I again want to thank you ladies for having this forum for us. I did not grow up in the Mankato area. I grew up in the Twin Cities, but I came to Gustavus in 1980 and went to school here for 2 years. I then transferred to Mankato State. I did not graduate because I had some health problems. Throughout, I've had various different careers in my lifetime. I've ran my family's dry cleaning business up in the Twin Cities that they had for almost 35 years. But then I married someone from Mankato, so I actually came back here. And because we chose we wanted Mankato to be where we don't have kids, but where I wanted to have my career. I started real estate 27 years ago, and I've had my own company for over 20 years. I also have run a storage business for my parents, and I have 2 other businesses that I own and run in the health and wellness field. I have never had any interest in politics. I just stuck to my businesses and just tried to make a living. Although in 2020, when COVID hit and the riots, that kind of made me start paying attention. So I started paying attention. I did run in 22, and of course I did not win. I decided to get a little bit more involved in politics after that because I was afraid of what was going to happen with the trifecta. So I started a women's Republican group, a chapter of the Federation of Republican Women, and we have 44 members, just women that want grassroots, that just want to be involved and learn about the political process and want to learn a little bit more and get involved with helping with some of the candidates with Eric and I. The reason why I'm running this time is I just feel that there needs to be some balance and accountability and splashed with a little common sense up at the Capitol. So that is the reason I'm running.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, we'll begin the questions. The order for responding to question number 1 will be first Dar Vosberg, then Luke Frederick, followed by Jeff Brand, then Erica Schwartz. First question is, during the 2025 session, legislators will generate the budget for the next biennium. What are your top priorities for funding and why?
Well, the top priority for me would be Eagle Lake needs a water treatment system plant. And that did not happen I know it's not a bonding year, it's a budget year, but that did not happen last year, and I feel that needs to be addressed. So that's one of my biggest focuses. How to make things more affordable for people. I think people are worried about that we pay too much in taxes, and they just want to make sure that the budget is being used properly and that there isn't a lot of waste. Concerned about a lot of the fraud that's been happening lately, so that's one thing that I would like to explore a little bit more and see what's going on there, and why it's happening in our state. So, but bonding is for the Eagle Lake plant is number one, and then just focusing on trying to make it a little bit more easier for all of us to live with the economy.
Okay, thank you. Luke Frederick.
So when I think about my policy goals or objectives going into in 2025, I was the chief author for the bonding bill for the Eagle Lake water treatment plant. I will continue to fight for that as well. I told everyone this year when we were working through the legislative season that is my number one project to fight for. I told that to every area that I represent. But I will also fight for many other things. I'll continue to make sure that our schools are fully funded. I will advocate for our human services system to make sure that people have access to the services they need, whether that's in the disability space or in the mental health space. Even after our historic investments in Minnesota during the 2023 session with the budget, with the surplus that we had then, whether we were talking the local cities, counties, the higher ed system or the K-12 system, everybody was able to outline how there is still greater need because of a lack of historic investment in those spaces. So the one-time funding that we did put forward in 2023 and 2024 just still wasn't enough. So I think some of the best ways when there are surpluses is investing in Minnesota because those investments benefit us long-term instead of just one-time feel-good checks, as what we were hearing some people advocate for in the past in their form of rebate checks. So I will always be thinking long-term and invest as the best way for the best bang for the buck for state taxpayer dollars.
The next, let's see, Jeff Brand will be next. Do you need me to repeat the question?
No.
Okay.
Okay. So my three priorities that I have for the legislature next year when we go back in session are, number one, world-class schools, world-class education for all of our public students in the state of Minnesota. I believe that that's where we really need to be focusing some of our attention. For a period of years in the legislature, we've been underfunding our education in Minnesota, and we are seeing the challenges associated with that. Thankfully, this year and last year as well, we were able to provide meals to all students in school, because if you're hungry, it's really hard to focus. And I think the medical or the mental health perspective as well is one of those things where we are providing more student social workers and school workers as well. Right now, we're ranked like 49th in the nation when it comes to social workers in schools. We could do a lot better than Alabama, and I think we really ought to shoot ourselves up at least into that middle of the 20s of states across the country that have that sort of support for our students. I also think that we need to do more to support our middle class. That's something that I've been focused on this entire time. I've been in legislature, whether it be working on workforce development in the tax committee and that sort of thing. And then finally, I think it's really important that we are able to afford our lives. There are a lot of parents right now that are struggling with the cost of childcare, and I know that we've been making investments in childcare, and I think it's really important that we double down on those investments as well, because at the end of the day, when a parent can't work, that does not help our economy, and it does not provide the jobs that we desperately need people to fill right now when we're in a period of time where there is more jobs available than job seekers in this state. So those are my three priorities for 2025.
Okay, Erica Schwartz.
My priorities would be to start off with providing some sort of tax relief for the working families here in our districts, in the district. With Jeff Brand and the DFL voting for up to $10 billion of taxes, such as property, gasoline, and et cetera. And the business that I own, with the family business that I married into with my husband, we run a convenience store in Nicollet, and I see parents struggling just to buy the bare essentials every day. I see single parents coming in counting their pennies and their quarters just to buy a loaf of bread and a gallon of milk. So I think We need to bring some accountability and balance back and provide some sort of tax relief for the working families here in the area. My second priority would be education. As a mother of 3, I would like to see that non-essentials be not the main focus at school, but let's get back to the basics of reading, writing, and math. As you guys know, that Minnesota, the students in our school systems are at 50% of our students cannot read above a 3rd grade level right now. And that needs to change. I think we need to bring focus back to the basics. I think we need to provide funding to directly without all the mandates that the DFL and Jeff Brand have voted for, and bring back to focus on the curriculum and the basic curriculum of reading, writing, and math to get, I think we should focus on reading scores being raised and not the non-essentials in the schools. Public safety would be another one. I would like to provide safe neighborhoods and communities in the district. As the only candidate that is endorsed by the MPPOA, I would like to make sure that the police officers have all the tools and resources they need to maintain law and order. I would also like to support security funding for the schools to make sure our schools are safe. As school is starting back up, thank you.
Okay, we will move on to the second question. Erica Schwartz will answer first, followed by Jeff Brand, then Dar Vosberg and Luke Frederick. Climate change is impacting agriculture and agricultural practices. How can the Minnesota legislature collaborate with farmers to adapt to this changing landscape? As I said, Erica Schwartz will go first.
So in the area that we live in, and it's considered rural, and we have a lot of families that farm in our community. And I think we can work together with them, because the farmers that I've talked to, I know also want to have clean water and clean air. They want to take care of the land that they farm because they're providing food. You know, they take pride in the food that they grow for us as families. I think we can work together and come up with a solution to reduce carbon emission, whether it's natural, gas, wind, solar, or hydro, to help reduce and eliminate the high cost of energy and make energy affordable for families again.
Thank you. Jeff Brand.
Thank you for the question. This is something that I focus on a lot at the legislature, because a lot of people back home here in the district really are very concerned about the climate change. They're very concerned about ways that our state government can help mitigate the losses associated with climate change. When you think about farming, it's already a gamble because you don't know what the weather's going to do. But there is some certainty that we can forecast what the weather's going to be like in the next 10 days with some certainty, within the next 3 days with more certainty. But with climate change, it's really hard to know if we're going to have a winter where there's actual snow, or if we're going to get flooding in June, which is something that we really don't see too much in our local area. And so that's where we have to be nimble and provide the resources that are available for cities and counties to be able to address these issues when they come up. On the topic of climate change, I authored a bill called House File 2602, which actually helps farmers by creating new markets and new opportunities through the Forever Green Initiative. That's the University of Minnesota, a research project which brings 14 new cropping systems to Minnesota. Some of them are cover cropping systems. Some of them, like pennycress and camelina, can be used for things like the sustainable aviation fuel that we at the legislature passed in 2023 through the Agriculture Committee, which allows airplanes to fly in Minnesota with biofuels grown here in Minnesota that are less carbon intensive. And I think that I'm really proud about that. There are a lot of things that we can do at the legislature, and one of the things that we have to do is not bury our heads in the sand or argue that whether or not climate change exists. And by the way, that happened in the Transportation Committee with folks on the other side of the aisle just last year. Another thing that we're doing in the Transportation Committee specifically is trying to find ways to lower the vehicle miles traveled per mile in the state of Minnesota. Those are things that we are addressing, and those are things that I think in the long term, we're going to start to see some real major impacts, or we could lead the way in the Midwest for other states to follow.
Let's see, Dar Vosberg.
Question?
Sure. Climate change is impacting agriculture and agricultural practices. How can the legislature collaborate with farmers to adapt to this changing landscape?
Well, one of the things I would want to make sure is that we're not replacing farmland with all solar, because we can't keep letting them eat up all of the land that we have for the farm, the crops. That's one of the things I would want to work with. We all know that we need to have clean air and clean water, so that's not even an issue. It's just how do we do it without having ridiculous oversight and regulations that we have to work through. So I would like to just focus on trying to figure out how we can do it efficiently and economically and try to make sure that everyone's happy.
Okay, Luke Frederick?
I really like this question in that intersection between climate change and environmentalism and agriculture. One of the biggest challenges that I see up at the state legislature is between those two groups, between the environmental side and the agriculture side. And the challenge is trust. Talking with both sides, neither side trusts each other. And so if we're talking about wanting to have one group of people in the agriculture space change practices to adapt to climate change, then they need to trust what we're doing is in their interest. And how do we do that? We build relationships. And so I've been able to work and build my relationships with those agriculture side of folks for the last couple of years serving on the Ag Committee. But I've also built relationships on the other side as well. And so going into this next legislative session, I want both of those groups to come together and do what they can anyways to talk with each other. Because I think when those relationships, not the relationships with legislators, let us be the tool for that conversation, but those conversations need to be happening between those groups. That is where that trust is made, that is where the relationships are made, and that's where we're gonna see that change and adaptation. Because when I talk with farmers and I talk about their practices, they tell me, oh, they've been doing it that way, that's because their dad did it that way, and their dad and their grandfather did it that way. And to change is hard in every aspect, whether we're talking about agriculture or not, change is hard. And so if we build those relationships to allow them to be able to trust what we are advocating for, that is how we're gonna achieve that change. And also, on top of that, is also incentives. It is hard when we're just coming down with mandates. That's why I've been proud of the incentive programs that we have put forward in the agriculture space, whether that is no-till or cover crops, or even trying to incentivize biofuels. Working with farmers in those spaces, I think, is the best way to achieve change.
Okay, I think I will throw out this lightning round question, which again would require just a yes or no. Let's see. Luke Frederick would be first, Dar Vosberg second, Erica Schwartz third, and Jeff Brand fourth. The question is, should owners of prime agricultural land be prohibited from converting their land to solar energy production, yes or no?
Oh, that's a hard one, just say yes or no.
But yeah,
Should they be prohibited from converting that land to solar energy? Is that the
that's
question?
the question.
No, they should not be prohibited. No.
Okay, and Dar Vosberg?
No.
Let's see, Erica Schwartz,
No.
Jeff Brand?
No.
I just love lightning rounds. They always agree. Okay, the next question would first be the response order would be Jeff Brand, Erica Schwartz, Dar Vosberg, and Luke Frederick. And the question is, according to the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development, a growing scarcity of workers is now recognized as one of Minnesota's most significant barriers to sustained economic growth. What approaches do you feel are needed to increase the Minnesota workforce?
This is a very good question, and something that I've been grappling the last 2 years as the vice chair of the Workforce Development Committee specifically. We were tasked with finding more folks to be part of the workforce. And some of those folks are right out of college, starting a new family, and it's really hard for them to juggle having a family and not being able to have daycare. And unfortunately, in the state of Minnesota, we've got a lot of people in a lot of communities who have to actually talk to those daycare providers before they can actually grow their families. And so that number one thing that I have is that we need to focus on providing more opportunities for childcare providers across our state, something that I've been very proud of and have a track record of supporting. Number one, which is to recruit more people in in-home daycare situations. And the next is to escalate those folks from those in-home daycares to a center-based daycare so we can have more opportunities in our community for parents to choose. The next thing that I think is really important is that this isn't something that just happened overnight. This is something that happened back in the 1980s. And if you're a state demographer of the state of Minnesota, just like the rest of the country, you're noticing a trend in Minnesota and other states that we are having less children. Right now, it's about 1.8 children per family. I happen to have 2 children myself. It's not the 4 or 5 member families that it used to be. And so at the end of the day, we have to have a workforce, then we have to have those folks make widgets. And if those folks ain't making widgets, it's really hard to have a business. And so some of the folks are trending towards things like artificial intelligence and robots, but I'm more focused on making sure that we can get people that maybe are looking for a second job into college educations and also into the trades as well. We also need a lot of electricians and plumbers and things like that. Really happy to support the North Star Promise to allow people to have the opportunity to go and get that college education, but also those trades are really important too. And the last thing I would say is that immigration is vitally important to the state of Minnesota's success in the workforce. And I do truly wish that Congress would actually get their act together and get an immigration policy reform that will actually meet the needs of the people across this country.
Thank you. Erica Schwartz.
Yes, I think with the cost of the increase of cost of living right now, I think it is hard on families. We have families who are working around the clock, often two jobs. The business that my husband and my family that I married into, we own a convenience store, and the people that close, I have a lot of working moms that are saying they're just trying to make ends meet right now. The cost of living has become survival mode right now with parents just struggling to buy the bare essentials. I think we need to figure out a way where we can bring some accountability and balance back. And let's try to provide some sort of tax relief, because everybody is struggling right now. I get a front row seat of when I'm working at the store, everybody is struggling just to buy the bare essentials. So I think we need to figure out how to, with the increase of cost of living, how to combat that. Because we have, even with the 2-income household, people are still struggling financially just to buy everything right now.
Dar Vosberg.
Well, one of the things is make sure that there's not a lot of incentives to not work. That's one thing that concerns me, is that it seems like there's a lot of people who want it, who take advantage of not being able to work and getting paid. I would like to, like Jeff said, I would like to focus on the trades and getting people to, there's no stigma in having a trade as a business, because some of those jobs are very well paying. College, I think, is too expensive, and whether you go to a private like Gustavus, you go to a public school, it's too expensive for most people to go to. That would like to make that easier to do. Another daycare also. When they're starting out, they obviously probably don't need daycare, but daycare, I feel there's too many regulations on them. They're trying to squeeze out the small mom and pop little daycare places instead of trying to have bigger ones. So that's a whole different ball of things that you can talk about with daycare. It hasn't been solved for 50 years, so there's a lot of ways we could solve that, but it's going to take a lot of working together. But my brother he's almost 52 years old, and he is for the first time without a job, and he cannot find a job. So I think interest rates, if the interest rates are lower, a lot of us, interest rates kind of drive the economy. If the interest rates were lower, there would be a lot more, people would be building more, there would be more houses on the market, there'd just be a lot more business going on with that, so that might free up the economy also as far as jobs go.
All right, thank you. Luke Frederick.
So when we're talking workforce, I think it's important to acknowledge that Minnesota has one of the lowest unemployment rates in the nation. At the same time, we also have one of the highest workforce participation rates. And what that means is Minnesotans are hard workers, right? They're not sitting at home watching TV with their feet up. They're out there working. And kind of building a little bit on the point that Jeff has made, that Senator Frentz likes to make too, is that we're also just not having as many kids as we used to. And so there's not as many people entering the workforce. I think that we have done a really good job of Minnesota being a welcoming state in the last few years. People are coming to Minnesota because they want to live here. But as everybody here has already kind of alluded to, other things that we can do include some of those supports, and whether that is the childcare and access to childcare so someone can enter the workforce, or it's other things that we've done with the legislature, like paid family medical leave or earned sick and safe time. And so somebody can have a sick day, because we've heard stories from people coming to the legislature saying that they had to choose between going to work on a particular day so they could afford food on the table, a roof over their heads, or they had to stay home to take care of a child. And anyone that is a parent knows the heart-wrenching situation that would be where you would have to choose one or the other. So I'm proud of the work that we've already done as a state legislature in regards to paid family medical leave and earned sick and safe time. And it's that kind of work and that kind of thinking that will keep Minnesotans active and keep the workforce as high as we can, while trying to incorporate any new ideas that come to the table, short of just having everyone have more kids.
Thank you. The next question will be presented to the candidates or answered in the following order: Luke Frederick first, Dar Vosberg second, Jeff Brand third, and Erica Schwartz fourth. This is an education question. With respect to education, what should be the legislature's role, if any, in determining school curriculum and what is taught in classrooms throughout the state? Luke Frederick.
So there's a delicate balance between what the state should come in and say is required curriculum versus leaving things to local choice. What we see, and we can look across the nation, right? There are some groups that advocate for book bans. But as a DFL, we are banning hunger in schools by making sure that every kid learns. It has a full belly so they can learn. We want to make sure that our kids have a well-rounded education. And so making sure that they look at all of history and have the basics like math and reading, that's great. But so is art class, right? Some of those non-standard things. And so making sure that we look at, I think one of the things that's been talked about most recently was even like financial literacy in our schools and the need for that. I think we do a pretty good job of like walking that line and saying what is required. But I have a feeling it's going to be something that no matter whether I serve in this next election or not, it will be a conversation that will continue forever.
Thank you. Dar Vosberg.
I feel that most of just like I think sometimes the federal government gets involved too much in stuff in our lives, I think that the local school districts and school boards should be deciding the curriculum. They know best what's in their area. Every area has different needs and wants, and I think it should be left to the local school boards and the teachers and administrators to come up with a curriculum. So, and if maybe there's some guidelines as far as what they need to have as far as to graduate, but obviously it's not working because most kids cannot read and write more than 50% of the kids cannot read and write at their grade level. So I want to figure out how to make that better. So we've got I feel if you leave it to the local people, you can get better results. So, and I also like to leave politics out of school. The kids should not know which side of the aisle a teacher is on.
Jeff Brand.
I struggle with this a little bit because at the end of the day, we have standardized testing, but we don't have standardized curriculum in the state of Minnesota. And so with regards to having that world-class education, I think that all the students across the state, no matter if you're in Duluth or International Falls or anywhere else in the state of Minnesota, you should be able to have that world-class education. And I think that number one comes down to financing and making sure that we've got teachers that aren't having to, donate their plasma after school just to keep ends meets and the wolf away from the door. I think that is a struggle right now that we have with teachers. And I was in this room a couple of months ago, and some teachers in here were very upset because they're not getting both the pay and the pensions that they think that they deserve. And so that's a challenge right there. I think at the end of the day, we've got students who are struggling to achieve. And I think that pandemic that we had in the last 2 years, 2019 and 2020 and 2021, really didn't help students. I know it didn't help my students at home. And to go through the Zoom classroom was an absolute struggle for everybody across the state. And I think that right now what we're doing is we've kind of switched focus now to the READ Act, and we've spent some money, $31 million to educate our teachers to a different way of teaching and reading and math. And I think if you give this some time, we're going to start to see some real improvement. We've seen some real improvement in this city's test scores and in Mankato's test scores. But, I think the other thing is this. We have underfunded education for a period of years in the state of Minnesota, and it's really disappointing when we've had divided government that we never really saw the need, and we never all fought hard enough for our students and for our teachers in our schools. And so that has made our test scores languish as well. If you look at the actual data, it's dipping. It was dipping down. It dipped down for the pandemic, but it's going back up slowly. With the READ Act, I really hope that it's going to go back faster.
Okay, Erica Schwartz.
I think every child deserves a great education. As a mother myself, I am concerned about the education for my children. And like I said, every child does deserve that. I also think we need to get back to the basics and not keep all the non-essentials out of the classrooms. I think we need to focus back on the reading, writing, and math. I also think that parents should also be a big part of the influence as far as their education and not the people in St. Paul, not the bureaucrats in St. Paul.
All right, let's have another lightning round. We'll start with Erica Schwartz, then Jeff Brand, Luke Frederick, and Dar Vosberg. Do you support allowing regionally significant projects, for example, community recreation centers and park and trails improvements, to be funded with a local sales tax? Erica Schwartz first.
To be funded with a local sales tax?
Correct.
No.
What did I say? Jeff Brand.
Yes.
Luke Frederick
Yes.
and Dar Vosberg.
I guess not knowing where the funding comes from now, so I would say, I would agree with it.
Okay. Our next question is again an environmental question. Dar Vosberg would respond first, then Luke Frederick, Erica Schwartz, and Jeff Brand. What do you see as the top environmental issues in our region, and how would you plan to address those concerns? Dar Vosberg.
Well, I feel one of the top concerns is the blackout bill. I feel that it's not sustainable. I think we all want clean energy and we all want safe energy, but it has to be affordable. And I'm really worried about what's going to happen in the future if we continue going down that path. We need to explore some other options as far as energy goes. There's just a lot of things. I mean, when you think of wind and solar, I said when you recycle, we're all worried about clean energy, but then what happens when you have to recycle everything? So I'm worried about that. I'm a crazy person when it comes to recycling, but I don't think we're quite there yet as far as being able to have everything be electric. That's a big concern of mine, is that I think it needs to come organically, and I don't know that the timeline that has been proposed for 2040, I don't think that's going to be met. I think we need to focus on trying to look at some other ways of energy, whether it's hydrogen, nuclear, biofuels, just trying to figure out some other ways to make it all work together, as long as it's, like I said, it's clean, safe, and it's affordable.
Okay, Luke Frederick.
I want to highlight that probably the one of transportation. I think of clean fuel. I think of electric vehicles being some of the top environmental concerns that I hear from people. I want to highlight that we did the clean energy bill in 2023, and that all of the power co-ops, all of our energy producers in the state, they did not oppose the bill. Like, the work was done in the legislature to incorporate their feedback into the work that we did to make sure that it is something that is attainable and feasible. Did it require pushing in some cases to get them to a position where they didn't oppose the bill? Yes. But did we also compromise in other spaces to make sure we could still get a bill to the finish line? Yeah. But I also hear about, going back to the kind of the agriculture side of things, making sure that we have, the future is probably going to be electric vehicles, but we're not there yet, and it could take a decade or 2 decades until we get there. And so if there are ways to have cleaner fuels, whether that's biofuels with ethanol, we need to be willing to have those conversations, and whether that means making an E15 standard. In my first term in the legislature, that was a bill that I had carried, was trying to advocate for a standardized E15 in all of our gasoline, and that was also coming from local agriculture groups that approached me initially about carrying that bill. So I think we need to be open about possible solutions, and if farmers choose to put solar panels on their land, we should give them that option. We are not mandating that in any way, shape, or forms. We are giving our farmers the choice of whether or not how they want to use their land.
Again, the question is, what do you see as the top environmental issues in the region, and how would you plan to address those concerns? Erica Schwartz, you're next.
Providing some sort of affordable energy for families. I believe if we can come up with a solution, whether it's natural gas, wind, solar, or hydro, to help reduce the high cost. I'm having people of all ages, especially young people, college age, coming into my store, buying $2 worth of gas with just quarters. A couple weeks ago, I had a young gentleman come in and put $8 worth of gas. And he came in and paid me all in dimes. I think we need to find a solution to provide for affordable energy. That way people are able to afford their cost of living, because they're just not able to do it right now. I see families struggling every day just to make ends meet. So I think if we can provide affordable energy, that would be a great start.
All right, Jeff Brand.
I'm going to take a different strategy on this one because I think there's something that we're missing that I think is really important. Two of us talked about clean water and clean air, but at the end of the day, it was the Minnesota legislature in 2023 that enacted the strongest non-essential use ban of forever chemicals in the entire world. There are other states and other countries across the world that are actually looking to Minnesota as the beacon of light and how they can do that in their own states as well. Forever chemicals are in our bodies right now. They're in our blood. They're in the blood of the babies that are born in the world today. Forever chemicals known as PFAS are also found in the Arctic sea ice. They're everywhere we look. 98 of 105 landfills that are closed in the state of Minnesota are leaching these chemicals into the local area's groundwater. We don't happen to have any of those in Nicollet County, but we have one just up the river in LeSueur County. And that is a threat to the Minnesota River. At the end of the day, we as Minnesotans didn't invent these chemicals. We didn't sequester for over 70 years data showing that these chemicals were toxic and kill people, cause cancer, low infant birth rates, low infant birth weights, infertility, also thyroid issues, a whole host of issues. But in Minnesota now, we are phasing out these toxic chemicals. The second step in that blueprint is going to have to be cleanup. And the third step is monitoring to make sure that that does not happen again. I don't believe in Minnesota that we as taxpayers should be on the hook for any of that. We should be keeping the receipts in the state of Minnesota, and we should be going after the bad actors who have made billions of dollars through corporate greed in order to sell their wares that they knew were toxic over the last 70 years of their own data. Finally, I also believe that we ought to work on medical monitoring so that folks that live in the East Metro or anywhere else in the state of Minnesota who have been negatively impacted by these dumping of these chemicals are also able to get free monitoring of their own health to prevent severe challenges to their health, like what we saw with Amara Strandy and the passage of Amara's Law in Minnesota. Thank you.
The next question is related to gun violence. The Pew Research Center published gun death data for 2021, the most recent year for which complete data is available. A total of 572 gun-related deaths occurred in Minnesota, of which 278 were in greater Minnesota. Suicides account for 391 of these deaths. The question is, what types of legislation do you believe would help mitigate this public health crisis? Jeff Brand would respond first, then Erica Schwartz, Dar Vosberg, then Luke Frederick.
First, I have to say that I'm a gun owner. I'm a Democrat and a gun owner. I do hunt in the state of Minnesota. I think that that's our legacy, to hunt and to shoot firearms, and it's also protected by the Second Amendment. But at the end of the day, there are people in the state of Minnesota that ought not to have those guns, and I'm thinking about felons in particular. But there are a lot of things that we can do in the state of Minnesota to prevent gun violence. Over in Blue Earth County, I was talking to the county attorney over there, and there's been a large spike in the number of felons that have found their way to have possession of a firearm when they do not legally have that right. That is a felony in itself. Straw purchasing in the state of Minnesota is something that we're cracking down on now, and I think that that's really important. I think another thing that we were able to do at the legislature this last year is we were able to enact some real low-hanging fruit when it came to gun legislation. I'm thinking of red flag laws. I'm thinking of universal background checks. If you're going to sell a firearm to another person, from my standpoint and my clean conscience, I'd want to know who I'm selling that weapon to and what their intentions are. And with the red flag laws, well, even in this city of St. Peter, we've seen a death involving a firearm between a loved one and another loved one. We've seen it in Blue Earth County. We've seen it in other counties. It's unfortunate, and it could have been prevented. I know that there's legislation that we could do for safe storage that could prevent needless deaths of youth in the state of Minnesota, and I think that that's important that we also look at as well. Now, we've had these conversations in the legislature for a number of years, and I'm really proud to have those conversations again. But at the end of the day, by not having any action, we're seeing those rates of gun violence only continue, and it's shameful because we could do things to prevent that violence.
Erica Schwartz.
I think we need to put pressure on the court system to prosecute gun violent criminals. I know we have many county attorneys here in Minnesota who are just not doing that, and I think that's where we need to start. I do believe that we should have the right to bear arms and be able to have our guns.
Dar Vosberg.
I do agree with Erica saying that the court systems, that, you know, they need to prosecute the people that are committing the crimes. How we legislate to make the stuff happen is sometimes you just can't. I mean, it's people who inherently are not good people that are causing these or doing these criminal acts. You know, yes, making it straw purchases, but the red flag laws I'm a little nervous about because you could have someone like my husband yelling at the TV, and pretty soon someone overhears him, and pretty soon he's in jail because he said something to the TV. You know, I mean, I just don't. You know, there's a slippery slope between how you protect people with this. I do believe we have the right to bear arms. I do not personally. I don't hunt myself, but my husband hunts all the time with his nephews and his brothers, and they have a cabin on Swan Lake. So, and I've got guns in my house. They're safely secured. I don't remember if that law passed where you have to, if we have a gun in the house and you can't protect yourself, you have to go find your gun where it's locked up. That's ridiculous because there's people who, you can't get the cops there fast enough to protect yourself. So that is a law that whether it passed or not, I don't remember. I would not be for that because I mean, if you have kids in the house, that's different, and most gun owners are. They care about the kids, of course, so they try to lock them up. But it's the criminals we have to go after. That's what's causing this problem. And yes, there's mental health, and I totally agree we need to work on that. The root causes of mental health, but there's a lot of factors in guns, and we can all argue all day about what's the right answer. But we just have to. The biggest thing is we have to, get rid of the criminals and lock them up.
Luke Frederick.
So I will say that I do not have any issue with a responsible, law-abiding citizen owning firearms. That being said, we cannot play ignorant to the violence that exists with using guns that happens in this state and in this country. mental illness is not unique to America. Everywhere, every country in the world has people who have challenges with mental illness. Yet we are still the country who has the issue with gun violence. So I do not put the issue with gun violence in the same category as that of mental illness. So we did pass a law that requires background checks. We did pass a law for some of those red flag laws. And so the example for that would be is if a person is sitting in, we had a real life example where someone came and testified before the legislature and said that their husband was sitting in their garage talking about how he was going to kill himself over and over and over again. And his family was incredibly concerned for him. And they wanted law enforcement to come there and take his guns, and so he could seek the help he could get. That is the red flag law. I don't think that that's scary. I don't think that that's law enforcement coming in willy-nilly, just taking people's guns away. It is in very specific situations where people have threatened harm to others or harm to themselves, and they want law enforcement to come in and create a safer space for everyone. The safe storage laws, we heard there's countless stories across the nation about how kids are curious. They find guns, and if they're loaded, what does this trigger do as they look down a barrel? That's not a hypothetical, that's actually happened. And so we required gun owners in Minnesota to lock up their firearms, not store them in 50 different places around their house.
Housing and transportation availability consistently show up as pressing priorities in District 18. If you are elected, what legislation would you support to address these needs? The question is first addressed to Erica Schwartz, then Luke Frederick, Dar Vosberg, and finally Jeff Brand. Erica Schwartz.
Can you repeat the question?
Housing and transportation availability consistently show up as pressing priorities in District 18. If elected, what legislation would you support to address these needs?
I would like to provide affordable housing and transportation to the families in the district. I think it's important that we would be able to provide some sort of tax relief, and that way people can afford their cost of living, such as housing and transportation. Because in the business that I own, I see people coming in every day struggling just to make ends meet.
All right, Luke Frederick.
Some of the measures that moved before the Minnesota legislature this last year was actually putting a limit on how many homes a person could own and then rent out. The impetus behind that was that we didn't want private equity firms from outside the state to come in, buy all the houses, and then only rent out half of them, because we do see that happening. And so if a house is being rented out, if two houses are each being rented out for $1,000, private equity firms can move in, buy two houses, take one of them off the market, let it sit vacant, charge $2,000 for the other house, so they still have that same amount of money coming in, but now all of a sudden there's a housing shortage and people don't have a place to rent or to live. And so part of the way that we wanted to tackle that this last year was putting a limit on how many houses someone can own. That did not become law. That is something that I'm still willing to, I want to engage in conversation at. I think that there are ways to do that where we can say if it's not a private equity firm from New York, if it is someone just from Minnesota and they have all of their houses that are in service, cool, let's put that into law, let's build it, let's make the law better. But I don't want a situation, as we already know, that there are, I think someone said up in the cities, a third to 50%, somewhere around there, of the houses sit empty, is because they are charging so much in rent for the other houses, and we need to clamp down on that. Yes, we need new construction. Yes, we need more options, but we also need to look at the housing that is currently available to make sure that people have access to that as well. In regards to transportation, it's a lot more than just say, hey, here, do the Oprah and you get a car and you get a car. No, we need to look at public transportation, and we need to look at buses. We need to look at rail. We need to be willing to invest in those things for everybody.
Dar Vosberg.
Okay, as a Realtor, if you keep go at that, the Minnesota Association of Realtors lobbyists will be definitely after that law, especially because it's for only allowing so many houses for a person to own, maybe in the Twin Cities, but not around here. That doesn't need to be applied. That's not happening around here. I know a lot of people who own more than 10 houses, and if they're going to be penalized for owning houses, this is a free market right now. Housing needs is, obviously right now, it's the interest rates. The interest rates go down, the houses' prices typically go up, and then there's more buyers out there. So it's a really tricky balance as far as what's a good interest rate where it will have an even market. Right now, it's a little bit slower because interest rates are definitely higher. They've gone down a little bit, but some of the how we're going to get the housing moving is to get. Well, first off, we need to have the builders be able to build houses in more of a reasonable rate, and some of that has to do with too much regulation on what all the stuff that they have to build, the rules and regulations. And I ran into a builder who, and how long it takes for things to get approved. He said he came in and he was complaining because it was taking him 6 months to get a plumbing permit for a property that he was working on. That's crazy. So there's a lot of things that could happen as far as getting the prices down, but the biggest thing is regulation. So people will build more homes, and if you can, and I know this sounds crazy, but you build more higher price homes, you will maybe get some of the people that are in that price range to move up that can maybe lessen the houses that are in the lower price ranges. So, because we still do have a shortage of homes right now. I think it's a little bit quieter just because I think people are wondering when the rates are going to go down, and it's always quieter around the election time. Regarding housing or transportation, yes, affordable transportation. A lot of it has to do with, especially right now, gas taxes, just having those not keep increasing on us. So the gas prices can go down.
Jeff Brand?
So when I was a former city council member in St. Peter here, we talked about a number of housing developments in this community, Park Road Crossing, Solis projects over at Traverse Green. There's a number of projects that we involved ourselves with in the city of St. Peter with the help of the Southwest Minnesota Housing Partnership, using both state and federal dollars to access the funds needed to create homes that were affordable for everybody. I think it's really important that we continue with that. Traditionally, a housing budget in the state of Minnesota is about $10 to $30 million, which is pretty small for a $50 billion with a B budget. But last year, in 2023 rather, we were able to spend $1 billion of that $18 billion surplus for housing across the state. And so when we talk about housing means a lot to a lot of different people. It can be apartment complexes, it can be standalone housing, it can be different units like that. But at the end of the day, if we're not making those investments, what we're doing is we're causing challenges across the state. We have housing advocates in this particular region who have to fight against the housing advocates in St. Cloud or Duluth for the scraps, because at the end of the day, everybody's fighting for that little pot of money. But when we have an appropriate pot of money, then we're able to have more substantive discussions. And so the Minnesota Housing Partnership had a questionnaire. I supported it. I wrote why I support it. I actually support a constitutional amendment that actually provides more money for housing. And so that'll be part of the conversation in the future. As far as transportation goes, I love trains. And we used to have trains that used to operate all over the state. Last year, we put $100 million for the Northern Lights Express from the Twin Cities to Duluth. I really think we ought to look at having a train to Mankato. I think we ought to have a train that maybe we can have go to Rochester. I think there's a lot of opportunity here. In fact, Amtrak is looking for a Sioux Falls stop from the Twin Cities, and that might actually go through Mankato. I think that's the future. And by the way, your grandparents had train access back in the 50s and 40s too.
One more lightning round, and then move on to closing. So Luke Frederick is first, then Darv Osberg, Jeff Brand, and Erica Schwartz. We are the League of Women Voters, and we wonder, do you believe Election Day should be a state holiday?
Yes.
Darv Osberg?
Yes.
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 Okay. We'll now have closing statements, and have up to 2 minutes each, starting with, let's see, should go in reverse. Darv Osberg, then Luke Frederick, Jeff Brand, and Erica Schwartz. Okay.
Well, again, thank you for having us Here, obviously, the two guys have been in office for 4 years, so I'm not knowledgeable on everything that goes on up at the Capitol. However, I will say that I'm being a business owner and multiple different types of business opportunities and different businesses that I've been in. I feel I have a wealth of knowledge. I've been a negotiator for 27 years, negotiating transactions with real estate, and I have an open mind. I have a lot of people who are on the Democrat side who would vote for me because they know that I listen and I can see both sides. I have a very critical mind, critical thinker. I've been doing that for so long. So that's my nature, is to be able to try to figure out the best option for everyone. I feel that we're at a time where this district definitely needs balance and accountability, and I really hope that after when this election comes up, that people will choose myself and vote for me on November 5th.
Thank you. Luke Frederick.
I just want to say thank you again to the League for organizing this activity. This next legislative cycle, and I'm going to build on the work that I've already done, right? I helped establish the nation's first Center for Rural Behavioral Health in Mankato to try to address the mental health workforce that doesn't exist. And so especially in greater Minnesota. I've served on the elections committee, where every single decision I made on the elections committee was focused upon how do we get more people to vote. And so then that's like an 18-year-old. What's the biggest barrier for an 18-year-old to vote? Knowing how to register. So we did things like pass pre-registration so they can register to vote at 16. None of that's geared towards, if you are Republican or if you are Democrat. I don't care. I just love democracy, and I want everyone to participate. And that's the mentality that I'm going to continue to bring forward this next legislative cycle, should I be elected again. Thank you again.
Jeff Brand.
Hi, my name is Jeff Brand, and I'm asking for your vote on or before November 5th. At the Capitol, I operate in a bipartisan environment. When I was a city council member, it really didn't matter about party. We got things done 7-0 by working together to get things done. In my first 2 years as in divided government, I was able to get 13 bills passed into law, with the majority of those authors in the Senate being Republicans. I have no problem working with Republicans. In fact, I think we ought to have more folks working across the aisle. And if that isn't something that you believe, you can go to the majority in the middle, and they have a report that shows that I am one of the most bipartisan legislators 2 years in a row since they started doing the reports in 2023. I will ask you tonight to decide who's going to represent everybody at the legislature. And I think that that's really important, because there are a lot of different constituencies in District 18A. There was just a Reformer article that broke today talking about how my opponent actually wanted to talk to some folks, and when she did, she actually accused the Democrats of creating a new Holocaust in the state of Minnesota with the trifecta control. I think that that's abhorrent, and I expect better from anybody who's running for office in this district, and that does not represent this District 18A, and I think it's really terrible. I ask for more civility in our government, and I also ask for more accountability amongst the voters here in the state of Minnesota as well. We have days at the Capitol. We are able to receive emails. I sometimes receive 200 emails a day, and so I know people are paying attention at home, and I really appreciate that. And I think that that communication goes both ways. And I think that it's really important that we as partners at the legislature are working towards a common good of building stronger communities across our state. That's my value. Lastly, I want to thank the League of Women Voters, because I think this is really important that we have this conversation tonight. And I look forward to having more conversations at the door as I talk to people at the legislature, at their door. And honestly, the theme is the same. Why can't we just have more people working together in St. Paul? And I promise you, I'll continue to do that. Thank you.
Erica Schwartz.
Yes. So at the age of 25, I was engaged to a young Marine who fatally passed away in a car accident. After he passed away, I realized I was pregnant with our daughter. After that, I had worked really hard, often two jobs, or really hard at one job to support my daughter. I am not somebody fancy. I am working hard. I married into small business. I think that I can make a difference. I also think that I'm a working mom who's working hard to make a change. Change is never easy, but it's necessary at this time. And Jeff Bryan is right. I did speak at a fundraiser about my deep concerns about the one-party majority And unfortunately, as a new candidate, I did make an inartful comment, and I will use my words precisely. Again, I think it's time for a change. I'm a working mom ready to make that change for working families here in the district. I hope you vote for me, Erica Schwartz. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, candidates, for your thoughts tonight. This concludes our forum. If we did not get to your question, please contact the candidates directly. Contact information is available at the Minnesota Secretary of State's website under Elections and Voting Candidate Filings. I want to thank our candidates again for participating. Thanks also to our co-host, St. Peter Chamber of Commerce, City of St. Peter, and fellow league members. To our viewers of the recording, thank you for watching. For more information about voting and these candidates, please visit www.vote411.org. And remember to vote. The election will be held on November 5th. Early voting starts on September 20th. Thank you and good night.